All right, so TPN, so it's any solution with nutritional value added to support a client who maybe can't maintain that regular nutrition through oral intake. Okay? So one of your objective is that we're going to discuss the principles, administration, complications, nursing care management of patients receiving central and peripheral, so TPN and PPN nutrition. So the components of TPN, I used to list them all out in here, but then I would always throw in at the end that it's MAID TV. So now I just put MAID TV there, and you guys can write in, or if you have a notepad, or you can just listen to me later. MAID TV is the acronym for what's in TPN. So tell me what you think those stand for.
Minerals,
Minerals?
Electrolytes.
No albumin. If they need albumin, they'll be getting that separate. Amino acids. Dextrose, electrolytes, trace elements, and vitamins.
Okay, one more time.
That's okay, I'll do it one more time. Minerals, amino acids, dextrose, electrolytes, so that's your MAID, and then TV is your trace elements and your vitamins. You're welcome. And I think those of you, oh no, I did put the new one in there. Never mind. I was going to say it might be on there, but these are going to be, and the portions of each are going to be determined by, yes. So it's not always in a separate bag, but it's not always in your TPN. So that's why I don't mention it in the actual components. So your lipids, you might have a bag like this that you're running at the same time, or at different hours, but this is what the fat looks like. Sometimes it will be in your bag, but a lot of times what you'll get is a bag of TPN and a bag of lipids. And usually the bags of TPN are bigger than this, but this is the one the school has. So, what was I going to say? Oh, the portions of each that are going to be in the bag, like, do we just have bags of TPN stocked up down in the pharmacy, and I say I need TPN, and they say just go grab a bag over there?
Just calling on what the patient needs.
Right, so if someone's on TPN or PPN, we're going to check their labs every day. And every day that order can change. The doctor is going to write a new order. And so that patient is going to be getting what they need depending on what their labs say every day. So it could be one day they're getting a lot more potassium than maybe yesterday, because when we did the labs this morning, their potassium was low. So whatever the morning labs say is what they're going to be getting. So your types of patients that need TPN are people who just can't keep their food down, like the hyperemesis gravidarum. What's that? Yeah, excessive vomiting, like just you can't stop, so there's no way you're keeping anything down. Intestinal obstructions, so we have these patients NPO usually, so we'll give them TPN. Patients with anorexia, sometimes they'll be put on TPN. Some patients that have cancer, it could be that maybe they're just nauseous and they can't, the chemotherapy is making them sick and they can't eat. Could be that they can eat, but maybe not enough that they're actually getting enough of the vitamins and minerals that they need. Or it could be that the radiation or chemotherapy has caused some sort of adhesion and they're not, they're malnourished. And then critically ill patients, so your patients who are like intubated in the ICU, obviously they're not eating, right? So TPN is always going to go through a central line. It's super viscous and it has lots of sugar in it. So the central line always goes into that superior vena cava, right? So there's a lot of blood swooshing through there. So it's a quick exchange. It's not sitting there. So this stuff would be super caustic if you were putting it in through a regular vein. So it has to go in through the large vein where there's lots of flow. We're going to make sure that if they don't have a central line or a PICC line, and that if we, and we'll talk about CVADs next, and we have it placed specifically to start TPN, that we make sure that there's an x-ray done prior, because again, we don't want it going anywhere but that superior vena cava. And we want to make sure we're always running it on a pump. We're never going to try and do drip whatever. There's a lot of dextrose in here and a lot of minerals, and if they're getting too much at a time, it can cause a lot of problems. I'm not sure, it might be on a future slide, or I might not have put it on there, but the tubing is also different than our regular tubing. You can see it, that little blue thing in here. It's a little tiny filter down at the bottom of the tubing that's just in there to filter out if there were any particles or clots or anything that formed. So you never run TPN without a filter. Some side effects and complications, obviously infections. And by localized, they mean maybe like where it's actually going in, the actual site's gotten infected, or it could be systemic. So again, there's a ton of sugar. What loves to eat sugar? Bacteria. So they're really stringent about how often the tubing is changed and the bags, and we'll get to that. So when we get bacteria building up in there, if we leave it up longer than it's supposed to, we could cause a systemic infection. Metabolic complications, so again, tons of sugar. So you could end up in hyperglycemia, but at the same time, maybe there's not enough sugar for a person who normally has a lot of sugar or has higher demand, so they could have hypoglycemia. And there's another time when we could have that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So anybody who's on TPN or PPN, we are getting AccuChecks on them every 6 hours usually is the order. So it's usually like 12 and 6, 12 and 6, 12 and 6. They also are going to be on sliding scale insulin. And the amount of insulin that we're going to give them is not going to go by that morning lab work. It's always going to go by the finger stick blood sugar that you're getting from them right before the coverage. Okay? Fluid volume, electrolyte imbalances, obviously it's a ton going into them, so we can be giving them too much fluid. We can also be giving them too much or too little electrolytes, so that's why every morning they get lots of lab work. They get a whole like CMP done. Refeeding syndrome, what's that?
They were starved for a very long time, and you don't want to feed them too much too fast.
Yeah, so maybe like alcoholics, they aren't necessarily, they're malnourished, but that's because they're getting all of their calories from alcohol, right? Their body is not used to all this vitamins and minerals. So if you start giving it too fast, it could throw everything super wacky. So usually with any of the TPN or PPN anyway, you're going to start slow because it is a lot of sugar. So you don't want to throw somebody into a crazy hyperglycemic state. So you're going to start slow, and you're always going to taper off. Air embolist, hemo, pneumo, and hydrothorax. Those are more likely, those are from when the doctor's putting the actual IJ or subclavicle in. So them putting in the actual CVAD would cause that. They'd hit the lung and cause it to collapse. So that's why anytime it's put in, we're going to do a chest x-ray, and we're going to make sure it's in the right place, but that will also show us the side with the lung to make sure it didn't cause any sort of hemo or pneumo. And then the hemorrhage and the thrombosis, again, are probably from when the actual line was put in. So the metabolic complications, I just said, how do we prevent these? We're going to start slow. We're going to make sure that they're tolerating it, lab work, and then your order will be to titrate over a certain number of hours up to a certain cc's per hour. And then when they're ready to DC it, we never are going to just stop it, because what's going to happen? hypoglycemia, they're going to crash. So we always taper them off. We always use the pump for an emergency stop. So if I'm stopping TPN, which is the one going in the central line, remember I said this one has more sugar in it, more dextrose. So we're going to hang 10% dextrose. If, let's say, you walk into the patient's room because the thing's beeping and the bag is out, but the new bag hasn't come up from pharmacy yet, or it's not quite time to hang it, so it's not there. If it's out and the bag's there, by all means, hang the next bag of TPN. But if we don't have access to it, we're not going to say, oh, it should be up in an hour, they'll be fine, because they're going to crash. So we're going to hang 10% dextrose until it comes up. So you, getting an order, what you're going to do is you're going to go grab it. It's going to be in the refrigerator. It's going to be ice cold, so I would normally grab it about half an hour before I hang it. Carry it around under your arm or something. Try and warm it up a little bit. You are never adding anything to this bag. When I first became a nurse, they would send us big bags, and they would send us a bunch of tubes or a bunch of vials and needles, and we had to mix our own. It's a mess. But what happens now, every time I'm sticking a needle into a vial and putting it in that bag, what am I introducing? Bacteria. So now if you go to the lab at all, if you get a chance to go to the lab, if you get a chance to go, or the pharmacy, if you get a chance to go down to the pharmacy, you'll see those big machines where they can put their hands in and mix stuff. They usually mix them down there in a completely aseptic environment. Whatever line you have this going into, you're not going to be shooting anything into it or taking anything from it, right? So you're not giving meds through the same line. You're not taking blood from that line. If for some reason you absolutely have to take blood from that line, you want to stop it for at least 10 minutes and flush it really well before you're going to take anything, okay? Because what's going to happen if you draw a BMP off of a line that you have this going into? All your numbers are going to be all over the place. Verifying the contents when it comes to the floor. You'll be able to see the doctor's order in your MAR. You can click on it and see the doctor's order. And you always, on the actual bag, you're going to see it's going to say potassium and how much is in there and how much of everything is in there. And you just want to go down and verify it. It used to be that 2 nurses used to have to verify it. I don't think it is anymore. So that was TPN. Higher sugar, 10% dextrose into a central line. Okay? So now we're going to talk about PPN, which means peripheral. So this can go through a peripheral line. I mean, it could go through a central line still. It can't not go through a central line or a PICC line, but this one can go through a peripheral where the other one can absolutely not go through a peripheral line, okay? So PPN, it's in a regular catheter, peripheral vein. Usually it's only short term, so they don't bother putting them onto the TPN. It's something that maybe the patient will have for 7 days. They just had surgery for an obstruction. They're trying to rest the gut. So they'll start them on PPN. Or that cancer patient that's just really nauseous, maybe she's eating a little bit, but not enough to actually get the nourishment that she needs. They'll still let her have her oral diet, and they'll just add a PPN to it short term to see if they can get what she needs to get healed. The protein and calorie in the bag is not as high, so the requirements from the patient isn't as high. Because remember, when you're sick, if you have sepsis or anything, are you hungry? Do you want to eat? Most of the time, no. Does your body stop requiring the nutrients? I was asking you that. What? I was asking you if you're sick, do you want to eat? Oh, you thought I was asking if you wanted to go eat. See, she's not listening. She's like, food, yes. No. So, you don't want to eat. You're sick. And so, but your body doesn't stop requiring the amount of nutrients and stuff that it was requiring before. And as a matter of fact, if you have sepsis or you're really sick, your body's actually requiring probably 1.5 to 2 times the calories and nutrients that you had that you were consuming before. So an emergency stop for PPN is only 5% dextrose.
What was that again?
So you would hang a bag of 5% dextrose, like a, one of these, but it's 5% dextrose. Just because, again, we don't want them crashing. If for some reason, like I said, for an emergency stop, so let's say the bag isn't up yet, it's time to get rid of it. Because you can only keep the stuff, usually it's 24 hours. So every 24 hours you get a new bag, but you also have to replace the tubing because bacteria loves sugar, right? So at, let's say 6 o'clock last night, it was put up. So at 6 o'clock, you're getting ready to check off and leave your shift, and you notice that your PPN is empty, and you go to the refrigerator, it's not there. You would hang 5% dextrose and just let the nurse coming on, hey, I had to hang this. The PPN's not up yet. Maybe you should call the pharmacy.
I got that mixed up with one that said in the book where it was talking about the 20, like the PIC line has to be less than 20 dextrose, and the central line can be more. Because they were talking about the thickness or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. With the central line, we use that 10% dextrose. And that's because the blood is moving a heck of a lot faster. The flow is fast. It's getting through faster. Whereas if you put it in your arm, it would get really irritated.
Yeah, but it was just, in the book, it just didn't, where I was reading, it didn't precipitate that. It was just
okay.
talking about the dextro and would it have to be less than 20 or more than 20.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. I gotcha. All right, so that is TPN and PPN. Any questions about that? So PPN, 5% dextrose to stop, can go in peripheral. Both of them are going to be changed every 24 hours, including the tubing. No other questions on that?
The tubing will be changed every.
The tubing and the bags will be changed every 24 hours. So when you put a new bag up, you're going to change the tubing too. You're going to throw it away and get new tubing.
Every 72 hours.
For TPN and PPN? In the book it says that? Did they change it to 72 hours? Because it's always been 24 because of the bacteria.
The food, the TPN every 24 hours.
Right.
But the tubing.
The tubing before the TPN? That's what it says in the book now?
That's right.
Okay. I will look that up. Why don't you guys take a break, because I have a feeling that thing's going to ring anyway, so I'm not going to stop the next one. But what's your question?
Oh, I wonder what type of circumstances would the emergency stop?
What's that?
What type of circumstances would we have to stop?
So the emergency stop would be if you ran out. That's basically it.
Oh, you ran, okay.
So your bag is done, but your next bag's not there yet. You can't just say, oh, they'll be fine, because then they're just going to bottom out. So we just need to keep the sugar up. Yeah.
So TPN and PPN are designed to be at 24-hour continuous speed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. They stay up 24 hours a day. They run. Yep.
I know with TPN they have lipids. Is that including the PPN too or no?
No. Usually it's not at all, but I would assume that they would do it separate if they needed it.
We're waiting for the,
Yeah, basically.
okay.
But you guys want to take a potty break? Go potties, do your
I'm
thing.
afraid it's gonna.
Well, then you just go out whichever door you know, wherever the flow is going at that point, you go. If it doesn't go off, though, come back in 10 minutes, okay?